Soaring gas prices expected to impact the economy. The U.S. Senate begins the debate on voter ID, America's talking, and outcomes from last night's primary election with Illinois in focus. This is the Center Square Daily for Wednesday, March 18th, 2026. I'm your host, Greg Bishop. Earlier this morning, here in central Illinois, a gallon of regular gas was $3.99. This is in a rural area with a state that does have the second highest gas taxes in the nation. In Chicago, a gallon of regular gas is going for nearly $4.10, according to AAA. Across the country, the average is up over last month. AAA's regular gas price index shows the current average at $3.84. A month ago, it was $2.92. Now, earlier today in Auburn Hills, Michigan, Vice President J.D. Vance spoke to supporters and he took questions from reporters. The spike in gas prices on every driver, that was brought up.
Gas prices are up, and we know they're up, and we know that people are hurting because of it, and we're doing everything that we can to ensure that they stay lower. I will say, the president said this, and I certainly agree with it. This is a temporary blip, okay? Gas prices are higher right now, and frankly, they're not even as high as they were during certain parts of the Biden administration because of what's going on in the Middle East. It's not going to last forever. We're going to take care of business. We're going to come back home. And when that happens, you're going to see energy prices come back down to reality. But in the meantime, we got a problem. We know that we have a problem. We're doing everything that we can to address it. We released hundreds of millions of barrels out of all these petroleum reserves so that we could put some downward pressure on prices. We're working on a number of things. In fact, a couple of things that I think will be announced in just the next 24 to 48 hours. I don't want to get ahead of the president on that, but we recognize this is an issue. We are fighting against it, and we promise that when this conflict draws to a close, when this operation draws to a close, we're going to see those energy prices come back down to reality because that's what the president promised to do. He delivered an energy-dominant agenda. It's made us much more secure in the face of these things. But yeah, we got a rough road ahead of us for the next few weeks, but it's temporary.
Now, today's gas prices aren't the highest that they have been. Back in June of 2022, as you heard the vice president say, under the Biden administration, regular gasoline hit the highest recorded average at $5.56 a gallon. Diesel in June of 2022 hit $5.81 on average. While the average of the state for regular is $3.93, the average for diesel is $4.97. The current average, according to AAA, across the country for diesel, $5.06. A month ago, that was $3.60. Again, diesel is something that a lot of the large trucks on highways utilize to get goods from one place to the other, and that's expected to impact inflation. If we take a look at some of the latest inflation numbers, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, you've got the numbers back in the Biden administration of 2022, where it spiked at 9.1% for June that year. About the same time, gas spiked to the highest. Now, the latest consumer price index for February this year at 2.4%, but with that spike that we've seen, it's expected to increase the cost of inflation. But it's not just the cost of filling up your tank for a road trip. It's also the price of a flight. And if you're willing to pay those higher prices around busier travel times like spring break and those higher fuel prices as well, there's another cost you'll have to contend with, and that's the time cost of getting through airport security. So if you're catching a flight soon, some saying you can expect long lines, depending on the time and the airport. The Center Square contributor Chris Woodward reports due to a partial federal government shutdown involving the Department of Homeland Security, Transportation Security Administration workers are not getting paid, and staffing is a problem. As a result, passengers having to wait longer in some airports than usual to get through security checkpoints. Regarding the long lines, Candace Redd, Senior Public Affairs Specialist with AAA's Los Angeles office, said waiting can be a problem at LAX. There's other airports being impacted by this as well, as the problem suggests it's going to be a headache for people wanting to travel. And experts, they're saying you may want to consider getting travel insurance. And with the latest on what's happening in Congress, including where funding for the TSA stands, we're joined now by Therese Boudreaux with the very latest Therese, thanks for taking time with us. Obviously, we've got people that are wanting to take part in travel to get to their spring break destinations, but they may have to face those long lines. A lot of questions about, is TSA going to be funded? What's the latest?
Well, the latest is that, unfortunately, there's not really progress on negotiations. So the White House last night, they introduced another counteroffer. They sent another counteroffer to Democrats. They've essentially, some of the demands that Democrats have, they've said, okay, we'll grant those, but we're not granting all of them. So they've said that they're willing to implement body cameras. They said, and this is a quite a notable um, backtrack, is they're saying, okay, fine, we'll say that certain sensitive locations like schools or daycares are going to be off limits for immigration enforcement officers. And so they've really they've tried to reach out and to find a compromise. But Democrats are saying that unless they get all of those demands that they have, which we covered at a center square, that they're not going to back down. They specifically want to see a requirement that agents get a judicial warrant on top of an immigration court warrant when they enter private property and arrest somebody. So the latest in the House is that House Democrats are introducing a discharge petition, which essentially, if you get enough votes in the House, at this point, Democrats would need 4 Republicans to join them. Then you can force a vote on a piece of legislation. And that legislation is a proposal to fund all of DHS for the year, which would open up TSA and FEMA and these other agencies that are running on low staff and unpaid staff. You would open all of those DHS agencies except for Customs and Border Patrol and ICE. And Democrats argue that by doing that, you can alleviate the worst effects of the DHS shutdown on the American people, and that lawmakers can, after that, come together and continue to try to find a compromise on immigration enforcement funding. But it's been over a month now. This is the 3rd longest shutdown that includes either partial or full. This is a partial one in American history. And so that's a record that's not really great for Congress to be breaking, but that's where we're at right now.
I understand, there's an argument about Congress has the power of the purse because they control how much money's appropriated, as we're seeing play out now. But surely that's, growing some frustrations among Republicans in Congress. How are they reacting to this ongoing delay? And are they being impacted by long lines at airports?
Oh, they're certainly unhappy about it. I mean, House Speaker Mike Johnson, Senate Majority Leader John Thune, they're accusing Democrats of, essentially at this point, because it's the second time Democrats have done this, of using or instigating a government shutdown in order to force policy priorities. And Democrats do acknowledge this, so that they'll argue that, Republicans' refusal to only fund part of DHS is also, using this issue, taking it hostage. But Republicans are very unhappy. And they refuse to agree to anything less than funding the entire Department of Homeland Security, especially since it should have been funded in October. Congress is very late to funding the federal government for fiscal year 2026, which began this last October. And so they're really, at this point, if they actually want to fund the government properly, by the time they pass the DHS bill, and that takes care of the last of the appropriations bills for the year, they have, a few months that will be in effect, and then they're supposed to figure out a plan to redo the whole thing for fiscal year 2027. Now, they probably won't. They'll probably pass a continuing resolution to keep funds on cruise control. But essentially, Congress is just, whenever it comes to funding the government, it's a really difficult thing for them to do, essentially. And so it's, again, there's not really much progress. Republicans are annoyed. Democrats are also annoyed. And we're on day 32, I believe, of the shutdown.
Yeah, the taxpayers definitely feeling it, and they're paying for all of it, but they're also having to pay that time tax of certain airports getting through security when, as you mentioned, security is low staffed and TSA not getting paychecks. So interesting to see how these various gears of Congress are moving and working against each other at times, and the people who are stuck in the middle of that being those taxpayers. Therese, you're obviously watching a lot of what's going on in Congress, and we've got a marathon debate that's starting about voter ID in the U.S. Senate. How long do we anticipate that they're actually going to be debating whether or not people should show voter ID when they go to the polls?
So the estimate right now is that it'll take at least a week, probably 10 days. The interesting about this marathon debate is that it is essentially a hybrid talking filibuster. So a lot of, well, actually a small amount, but very vocal Republicans have wanted Thune to institute or to revive the talking filibuster, which would force senators to hold the floor and try to convince other lawmakers to either vote for or against the bill. And whenever they can't do that anymore, the 60 vote threshold would no longer apply. So basically that 60 vote threshold would only apply to a bill if senators are able to hold the floor. And then it would just be a majority vote, which Republicans could then, they could use that to pass the legislation. But Thune is wary about that. He says there's not enough support. So he's doing this hybrid talking filibuster, which means that the bill is still going to need 60 votes at the end of the day or at the end of the week at this point in order to pass, which means it likely won't pass. But it does give lawmakers, both Republicans and Democrats, the chance to really speak either for or against the bill. So Republicans are saying that they're going to use this time to force Democrats to explain why they won't vote for this bill that polls show the provisions in this bill, 80%, 70% of Americans support. And Democrats are saying that they'll use this time to, force Republicans to go on the record about things that they see as controversial on the bill. So in many ways, it's not very useful. There are many lawmakers who have kind of said privately to reporters that they're not even quite sure why they're doing this, because the end result is still going to be the same, most likely, that the bill is not going to pass, because it's highly unlikely that 7 Democrats are going to join Republicans in order to pass this. So it's kind of just show is what a lot of people are thinking.
And I think not being very useful is how some may characterize all of Congress in the past few years. So it's fascinating to see. They're going to go through this exercise, and there's going to be a lot of cameras on it. There's going to be a lot of ink spilled in the press about it, and a lot of talk about it as well. But how's the president reacted to this idea of it still having to take that 60 vote threshold with this hybrid talking filibuster?
So the president was very supportive of a full talking filibuster, because again, that's probably the only way that this legislation can pass the Senate. It's already passed the House, but in the Senate, it needs 60 votes. So he has actually said that he's not going to sign any bill besides a bill that would fund the Department of Homeland Security until the Save America Act is on his desk. And so, that does complicate things. Now, if a bill has been put on the president's desk, it's been passed by both chambers of Congress, and the president doesn't do anything about it, it will automatically take effect after 10 days. But it still is yet another delay on a lot of the activities of Congress. And this is what we've kind of seen from the 119th Congress. We've had this very partisan atmosphere, and there have been so many different projects and partisan bills have taken up a lot of time. And so you have things like funding the government that have kind of suffered because of that. And then, as we're seeing with DHS, even that process becomes very partisan when there's something that comes up. So the president is not happy about it, but in some ways there's only so much he can do, because Thune would need a lot of support from Republicans in order to institute that talking filibuster, which he simply does not have. Again, there's a very vocal minority of Republicans who want it, but not the majority.
It's obviously an election year as well, and you've got candidates for the U.S. Senate being asked about the filibuster, and many of them pushing back on ending it, saying it's important that we don't have, as we've talked with Illinois Senate candidates here in Illinois, it doesn't give you that pendulum swinging back and forth with different types of legislation for just whoever has control of the Senate. And Therese, all of this happening in an election year, but it's also the 250th birthday of the United States, and I can't believe we're already, way past the midway point of March. So July 4th is coming up pretty quick. We'll see if there can be any unity in Congress in the next few months to see if we can celebrate that 250th anniversary all together, or if we're still going to be at each other's throats in Congress. So greatly appreciate your time. We'll be checking back in with you in the days ahead as you continue to watch what's going on the U.S. Senate floor about this issue. All right, now it's time for America's Talking with headlines from across the country. Businessman Mark Barros says that he has left Washington State and is taking his Seattle-based company with him because taxes have become too burdensome. The Center Square's Randy Diamond reports Barros posted on X that it's not even about the millionaire's tax that passed Washington state legislature last week, which places a 9.9% income tax on household incomes of more than $1 million. Barros did not say in the post when he moved out of state, but said his photography equipment business company called Movement is moving this month. Among the taxes Barros cited are the city sales tax of 10.5%, city property taxes, the state's capital gains and estate tax, and state and city business and occupation taxes. Meanwhile, in Texas, a judge has ruled in favor of Muslim plaintiffs in a lawsuit filed against the Texas Comptroller's Office over Texas's new school choice program. The Center Square contributor Bethany Blankley reports the deadline to apply the program was Tuesday, but the judge extended that to March 31st. The new program provides roughly $1 billion in education savings account grants to roughly 100,000 students in Texas. More than 200,000 students have applied as of yesterday, and more than 2,200 schools have been approved to participate. Now, proponents of the program argue that it was designed to support students from lower-income families seeking to leave public schools for alternative education options. The majority of applicants, 80%, are existing in private school students. Notably absent among the approved private schools are Islamic schools. One Islamic private school was approved but later was dropped. Muslim students attending Islamic schools were also prohibited from applying. The reason, supporters say, stems from an attorney general legal opinion stating private schools with potential connections to foreign adversaries were prohibited from participating. 5 parents and 3 schools sued, arguing that prohibition is illegal. A hearing in that case continues and is scheduled for April. And now we look at Tennessee, where a bill that would double the number of education freedom scholarships as the green light by the Tennessee House Education Committee in a close vote Tuesday. The Center Square associate editor, Kim Jarrett, reports that House Bill 2332, it would double the number of scholarships from 20,000 to 40,000, raising that price tag to $310 million. Governor Bill Lee is supporting the bill. Democrat and Republican lawmakers opposed to the bill said that there was a lack of transparency about who received the scholarships in that program's initial year. In Pennsylvania, the non-human status of artificial intelligence chatbots would have to be disclosed to humans, and those same chatbots would have to be rigged against suicide-encouraging messaging under a bill that passed the Pennsylvania Senate Tuesday afternoon. The Center Square's Ford Turner reports the prime sponsor said AI is creating tremendous opportunities and tremendous risks. Specifically, there have been a growing number of cases in which children have turned to AI chatbots for emotional support and a sense of connection, and in such cases, the robot messaging can seem very real. The bill passed the Senate in Pennsylvania in a 49-1 vote, with Republican Senator Doug Mastriano of Franklin County the only no vote. The vote came a little more than 3 months after President Donald Trump's December 11th executive order, setting up the possibility of federal lawsuits against states that create AI laws that conflict with federal policy. However, child protection state laws were made exempt in that order. Enforcement of that measure, if it's signed into law, would be provided by the state attorney general's office with the potential of up to $10,000 per violation in fines. And that's it for America's Talking here with the Center Square Daily. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Center Square Daily. Now let's put Illinois in focus, where yesterday was the primary all across the state for a variety of different races. Big on people's minds was who is going to be the Republican nominee to take on Governor J.B. Pritzker, who ran in the Democratic primary unopposed. Pritzker held a campaign-style event last night in Chicago and featured a whole host of different elected officials who are Democrats standing on stage in unity, and Pritzker used it as a way to kick off the election into November. But he took the time to criticize President Donald Trump and Republicans.
Right now, grifters of corruption and selfishness, purveyors of bigotry and hatred, have taken control of the White House and the Congress. Their purpose is to make themselves and their dear leader richer, and to do it at the expense of the powerless and the most vulnerable. The carnival barker-in-chief. Oh, sorry, I meant the commander-in-thief. Says there's no federal money for health care and food assistance for families in need. But he had no trouble finding tens of millions of dollars to send masked troops with assault weapons onto the streets of Illinois to terrorize Americans.
So again, the governor ran unopposed in the Democratic primary. He's looking to get a third term for Illinois governor. He does have a new running mate, Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton, seeking the U.S. Senate seat vacated by Dick Durbin, not running with Pritzker for a third term as governor. Instead, he tapped Christian Mitchell to be his lieutenant governor candidate. You saw him standing there on the stage behind him. Now, we had 4 different candidates running for the Republican nomination to take on Pritzker, one of them being Darren Bailey, state senator who ran against Pritzker 4 years ago and lost, and also 2 years ago ran in a primary against Mike Bost, a congressman from Southern Illinois, and also lost there. But Bailey getting the majority vote last night from Illinois Republicans who voted in the primary, and he suggested that Governor J.B. Pritzker is looking to run for president, something that Darren Bailey says he is not doing.
I'm not running to be president. I'm running to be your governor. Present, focused, accountable. Together, we can make Illinois affordable again. Together, we can make our communities safe. Together, we can give our kids a future right here at home.
So the rematch between Bailey and Pritzker is on, and we can expect to hear a lot more of what we're highlighting here in the months ahead. Governor J.B. Pritzker, he said that Bailey was likely to be the nominee before all the dust started settled Tuesday evening, and he said that Bailey wants to be President Donald Trump.
Tonight, it appears the Republicans have again nominated Darren Bailey as their candidate for governor. Remember him? Bailey wants to be the Donald Trump of Illinois. He wants to lower the minimum wage. Lower the minimum wage. He wants to take away a woman's right to choose. He wants to continue the Trump tariff taxes on groceries. And his family still runs a school that uses a curriculum teaching that slavery wasn't wrong, and that women in the workforce have been harmful to America. That's who the Republican Party wants you to elect governor. But that's not who we are in Illinois, is it?
Now, Bailey responding to some of the criticism he's heard over the past 4 years since he lost to Pritzker, saying that it's the governor and Democrats that are causing pain on Illinois taxpayers.
To my friends in Chicago, I know I've got a Southern accent. Some folks have said that I talk funny. But from Carbondale to Wilmette, Quincy to Danville, one thing remains the same. Those bills in your mailbox, they don't care about anyone's accent. That's because this problem isn't regional. It's leadership. Illinois doesn't have a revenue problem. It has a leadership problem. And nowhere is that clear than when we take a look at our property taxes. Illinois families don't truly own their homes anymore. They rent them from the government.
So clearly, the lines are being drawn here with the two major party candidates soon to be set after the State Board of Elections certifies the election outcome. But the race is going to be a rematch, and we're going to hear a lot of different promises, some of those laid out last night from both candidates. Here's Governor J.B. Pritzker saying what he plans to do for Illinois taxpayers.
We will bring down electric bills by making Illinois the standard bearer for nuclear and renewable energy production. We will lower the cost of health care by cutting prescription drug costs like we have and continuing to eliminate bills for unexpected health emergencies. We will make Illinois the heart of American innovation in quantum technology. We will accelerate economic growth and job creation by continuing to attract new businesses to our state. We will raise wages while building the skilled workforce of the future.
Now, Bailey also laid out what he says Illinoisans need from whoever's the next governor.
Our service workers, the men and women who show up early, stay late, and live on tips. Let me be clear, no tax on tips. To our hardworking Illinoisans putting in extra hours to provide for your family, no tax on overtime. And to our union members and our civil servants, I want to say this directly. I am not Bruce Rauner. I'm not coming for your pension. I want to work together to make Illinois government work again at all levels. You earned it. You were promised it. And as governor, I will uphold that promise.
So we've got several months before the November election, and that's just one race that's going to be top of mind for people in the weeks and months ahead. But we also have the outcome of the primary for U.S. Senate to fill that seat being vacated by Dick Durbin, who's been in Congress since 1983. He announced last year he wasn't running, and it opened up a crowded field on both Republican and Democrat sides. But as the dust settles, looks like for the Republicans, Don Tracy is going to be the nominee, and Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton will be the Democratic nominee. But the field's also seeming to settle for various other congressional races across the state. In the 1st Congressional District, Republican candidate Christian Maxwell won the GOP nomination. She'll face off against Democrat incumbent Jonathan Jackson in that Chicago area congressional district. In a crowded and tightly contested Democratic primary, LaShawn Ford, state representative, edged out Chicago official Melissa Conyers-Ervin to secure the Democratic nomination for the Congressional District 7. Republican Chad Copey will face off against Ford in November. Meanwhile, a closely watched race was neck and neck for most of the night last night with Illinois' 9th Congressional District. Evanston Mayor Daniel Biss ended up managing to beat content creator Kat Abigazela for the Democratic nomination in that district. Biss will face off against Republican John Ellison. And the Democratic primary for Illinois Comptroller remained too close to call for that statewide seat. State Representative Margaret Croak held a 25,000 vote lead over State Senator Karina Villa, with 99.2% of the vote reported early Wednesday morning. Croak raised $1.8 million for her campaign, according to campaign filings, with strong individual backing from a variety of people, including Governor J.B. Pritzker and House Speaker Chris Welch, among others. Meanwhile, in an interesting state house race, an Illinois Republican House leader lost their primary Tuesday. Macomb Republican State Representative Noreen Hammond, the deputy minority leader in the House, came in second. According to unofficial returns, Joshua Higgins captured nearly 58% of the Republican vote in that three-way race. Hammond said in a statement that serving in the legislature has been one of the greatest honors of her life. Be sure to catch these stories and many more from all across the country at thecentersquare.com. From my studios in Central Illinois, I'm Greg Bishop. Join us here tomorrow for more stories impacting you, the taxpayer, from across the country, only with the Center Square Daily.